And welcome to Vlog Thursday that I think I started about on time. I sorted the stream key out. I think I got everything figured out. But this is, was it 472? And where does that put that information at? It's kind of funny the way I'm looking at it because I don't always see. Yeah, 473. ZFS updates and the Microsoft stuff. Fun times. Actually, why is there nobody in chat? That almost seems odd. Let's see, go back to live chat. So if someone's watching, let me know. Okay, it says I have viewers. I just don't know why the chat doesn't have any in it. So I'll type right here. Someone say hi. Say hello. Is this thing on? I want to make sure that I've got the right chat. It looks like the right chat. YouTube can be a little bit confusing. There we go. Cool. Just wanted to double check that. You know, it's the little things. I want to make sure I wasn't ignoring people's chats. It's not that I'm desperate for attention. Well, maybe I am. Okay, maybe it's a little bit of that. But mostly I wanted to make sure I wasn't missing people's chat here. I only have until about 4:30 my time, which is roughly 40 minutes from now. So just a heads up to anyone starting now that it won't be quite as long of a live stream. I have some things to do. I wanted to start the stream earlier, but I got caught up just, I don't know, doing things. Had just a handful of things to do and catching up on stuff. The paperwork of running a business occasionally always seems to take longer because, I don't know, tedious reasons. But I wanted to start with the Microsoft thing. So we'll work in reverse order. And I thought this was, I haven't decided if I should do a video on this directly as a topic. Microsoft handed the government encryption keys for customer data. Privacy advocates are worried about the precedent this sets for potential abuse. I maybe this is where I have a disconnect because it didn't surprise me, but people seem surprised. And I guess that's why, like, I think this when it came out, I'm like, water's wet. Microsoft hands over all the data they have to you based on the jurisdiction they're in, the US jurisdiction. Now, I get it that typically companies resist handing over encryption keys to authorities. Most famously, Apple refused to grant FBI access to the phone used in the San Bernardino case. This is a little different, and I say it like that because Apple refused to handle something over, but the context is different the way they wanted Apple to do it. They wanted Apple to write a very specific firmware update that would unlock a very specific device versus Microsoft has backups of your data. They're just subpoenaing data that Microsoft already has. But I think what I realized talking to people is they're shocked that Microsoft has your keys. And so that seems to be probably where the more shocking thing is people go, Microsoft has all my encryption keys? I'm like, you didn't know that? And so maybe I'll do a deeper dive into this as a video. I always debate of how much time I want to spend on news topics because they're fleeting and fast. But the other side of it is, I think maybe this is something maybe more people should know, is that Microsoft has your keys. And if a company has the keys to things, they can be compelled to give those keys to the authorities and jurisdictions that they are bound by. So maybe there's some usefulness in raising more awareness that if you're using Microsoft, this is something that can occur. Maybe it's just my understanding of Microsoft made me think that this was a no big deal, but I don't know, maybe correct me on this. Is this not common knowledge that Microsoft holds on to all your keys? And of course, this is of great concern to those that are abroad or outside the US, because this is a concern depending on their country's relationship with the United States. So yeah, this is I don't know, it's definitely something to take into consideration that Microsoft can surrender your information because they have it. This is one of the reasons going back to things like Signal Messenger I've talked about. And there's obviously people who would go, but Tom, there's no potential way I could trust a phone. And at some point, you can't trust anything unless you grind your own silicone and program your own system from the ground up, and you're the only author of it. But that's at some point, there are some levels of trust that you have to have some kind of confidence that you're going to have secure communications. But Signal is one of those tools that I've used for a long time because they keep you in control of the keys. That's how Signal avoids being able to surrender the information that they have about you by simply not having it. This has been the premise of a lot of these companies, is they realize the less information they have, the inability for them to surrender it is the feature why you like their service. So something just to consider there. Something to think about. Let's see. Greetings, Tom. Have you done any evaluation or testing on the OpenViro PoE unit? Yes, a little bit, not much. I have one because Jeff gave it to me, so I don't need to buy another one. But I think it's a neat environmental monitor because of the SNMP feature on it. I like the security of it. I like that it's a very focused singular device. So it's a really cool device Jeff has built. For those not familiar, Google up OpenViro, you'll find Craft Computing. Me and him talked about it last night on a live stream. I think it's a great tool for doing exactly what it does. You know, reasonably placed thermal monitoring within a rack or really wherever you want. You don't have to use it for computer stuff. It's anytime you want really accurate thermal monitoring. Cool product, neat idea. I like that Jeff built it. But I mean, how many would I buy? I don't know. Obviously, there's still a little bit of challenge because it's just giving you data. You still have to build something around monitoring and actioning on the data. That is going to be a little bit of a challenge. But then again, that's why he chose SNMP, because lots of people already have tooling in their data centers and any of their server room management tooling that allows you to manage SNMP. It's an old protocol that isn't going away anytime soon because it's so embedded into a lot of things for monitoring. So it's a pretty neat device. It's definitely worth checking out. It all comes down, of course, to your use case for things, and I have a much more limited use case because I just don't have as big of a server room anymore that I manage. So, but it'd be something I talk to clients about. The price is reasonable. The features are reasonable on it. So, like I said, overall, it's pretty cool. Now, I threw ZFS in here as a topic. Someone says, I assume any service I use has information, provide them, and they claim they won't sell it and won't give it away, and terms can change. Yeah. Hello, Tom. I built a ZFS test rig. 15-year-old drives and a striped mirror, tons of errors, but I can't get it to corrupt data. I love ZFS. Yeah, that is the big thing with ZFS, is absolute amazing level of resiliency that you just don't get with a lot of other file systems. So I did the video yesterday, deeper diving into ZFS. So that's definitely, that video seems to be doing well. A lot of people seem to appreciate it. So I put out a lot of info about things because, man, I don't know how many times me and my friends over at TrueNAS and IX Systems, or I think Wendell, and really anyone who's talked about ZFS, that we cannot convince the confidently wrong people in forums that the ZFS ZIL, specifically the special log VDEV type, is not a write cache. Doesn't mean people won't keep asking, and there'll always be someone on Reddit recommending it, no matter what I say. But such is life. I imagine there's going to be some direct integration to Home Assistant. I asked a Jeff question. You like ButterFS? Yeah, the ButterFS is a runner-up. It's not terrible, but it's certainly not ZFS. It's I'll make someone mad. I'll call it Temu ZFS. I don't know. It's not exactly wonderful, comparatively speaking. So, Wendell dropped a really good video, and I haven't watched it, but he has a nice write-up in his forums as well about it. Let me find that forum post. So I think it's worth bringing up. History. Because I was actually working on, I want to do some parallel videos, essentially. And what I mean by parallel videos is videos where I do the same thing and 2 different hypervisors. So Wendell did this video. He just posted this today, but this is the write-up in his forums, in the Level 1 Tech forums, talking about building Proxmox and doing off-site backups, etc. And I like this. This is a nice write-up. It also kind of highlights something I got to really go through this and walk through and build. I want to build the same setup in the same way I built it for XCP-NG. But one of the things about this write-up is the way Zen Orchestra handles this versus Proxmox. And it's not that I'm saying one is better than the other. People just keep losing their minds over that because they are almost like religious level of their identity being tied to which hypervisor they use. The comments are just kind of like, it's interesting. But one of the things that kind of is highlighted here when I'm looking at this is the extra steps. And it's like all of the things are completely doable in Proxmox that are also doable inside of XCP-NG. It's just done so differently, and there's a lot more, in my opinion, automation. But Proxmox is just Linux. So with these Linux commands, you absolutely can do everything he's talking about here. And to me, that's just one of those where there's such a big difference between it. It's not that you can't do it, it's that you handle it differently, and it's a lot of different command line Linux and things like that. I don't know. I got to really dig into his. It just came out, and I started reading through it just before I hit go live. But I like the concept, and I want to make sure I'm right or wrong, or give people more context on how things like this work by simply rebuilding Proxmox the same way and repeating some of the same features, and that way it's a very side-by-side comparison. I still have several Proxmox boxes I built. I got them all set up over here. They're working quite well. I love Proxmox's integration with ZFS. In fact, that's what Wendell's really leveraging there, because it is really computationally efficient to do ZFS snapshots. That carries over to if you're building something on Proxmox inside of ZFS, you get all the computational efficiency of the ZFS snapshots, and then using ZFS send, you can move those snapshots to have a backup of your Proxmox box somewhere else. And I like saying Proxmox box because that makes me happy. I like the word Proxmox. I think it's easier to say than XCP-NG. I don't know if that affects anything about the actual functionality, but I think it's an interesting aspect of it. Let's see. Hypervisor cults, yes. Do you attach NFS storage? Yes, most of the time NFS. That's just what I go with because it's easy and it works. NFS is wonderful. I have no problems with attaching, and this goes for Proxmox as well. If I'm running local storage, that's fine. And do you have to have SSDs? Is a different kind of question, because I have larger groupings. So I have like my Q30, which has 27 drives in it. I can tell you that my Q30 with 27 drives will outperform a smaller group of SSDs. So the answer is it depends. So do you have as many drives as I have that are HDDs that'll perform as well as a fewer number of SSDs? It depends on your use case. Have I ever heard of MooseFS? I have heard it mentioned. I don't know much about MooseFS. MooseFS. Interesting, but is this open source? What is the license on it? It's on GitHub. GPL. I don't know. It's interesting, but I don't know that I have a particular trust in it as a file system. I don't know. It's not nearly as popular, so I can't really speak to is this good or not? I don't know. Like, what I'd have to dig into, what advantages does this have over Ceph? Scalable, high performance, blah, 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 blah. Huh. Get a quotation if you want high availability metadata. Interesting. So is it like the base is free and you got to pay for the rest? Yeah, it sounds like they got a community edition with less features. So the community edition has less features. But they hold out some of the other features. I don't know. Like I said, ZFS is awesome. Ceph is well documented and awesome. So I don't know that. I don't know what advantage it holds over Ceph. I don't really have time to look into it. I will tell you it's not as popular as Ceph. So me, Wendell, and the two Jeffs are your YouTube feed. Awesome. NFS has always been fast and reliable for me on a 10 gig network. Yeah, I've always had good luck with NFS. Not that there's anything wrong with iSCSI, it's just different. And iSCSI, because of the nature of having block storage that is sometimes not opaque, but when you're dealing with block storage in ZFS via iSCSI, like on a ZVal, you're always managing the underlying file system by its source. So if you tie together your hypervisor, however your hypervisor formats it, so if there's any corruption problems, you're kind of dealing with it directly from the hypervisor. Versus with NFS, if anything happens, everything's a series of individual just files, and I can manage them on ZFS. I can manipulate them on the TrueNAS box that they might be attached to rather easily. So NFS has always been just kind of simple to me. iSCSI, because it's block storage, like when you have to do a rollback, that can get tricky. So if I do a snapshot in NFS, and let's say I have 8 VMs running on an NFS snapshot, and I do, well, I had an NFS share and I run a snapshot. I have a point in time for those 8 VMs that are 8 separate files. And if I want to roll back to that previous snapshot, I don't have to roll all 8 of these back. I can go back and clone into another spot that snapshot, grab the one VM that I needed for whatever reason, and then put it back into the other NFS share. So there's things you can do that's completely handled on the storage server side. In my case, it's generally TrueNAS, that I would be missing if I did this in iSCSI. So that's one of my reasons for liking doing things in NFS. Open source, but some features are behind a paywall. Okay. Yeah, I see. The one thing I am terrified about when it comes to Proxmox that the community likes, so like the Proxmox helper scripts. There's a lot of people that couldn't get Proxmox going to the way they have it set up without the helper scripts. It also terrifies me that people are willing to just copy and paste their infrastructure together off of a helper script. So, I mean, the helper scripts seem non-nefarious. I don't know. They're community maintained, so I assume the community doesn't put backdoors in it and that they're all good community members. But it is kind of concerning because that is a very popular attack for the last few years that keeps ramping up, is where are those watering holes of popular scripts? And let's go ahead and pour a little special sauce into those watering holes so we can get backdoors into infrastructure. You've lost 20 VMs using iSCSI. Oh, I've definitely helped a lot of people try to recover iSCSI, more so than NFS. Because what they're doing, or what they do wrong, as I should say, is I've run into where people are going through and doing dumb, not setting networking up properly and causing some of the problems and some of the disconnects. I've seen people update switches, and while the iSCSI was connected, and if you have a switch in critical path of storage and you update it while critical path storage things are happening, you can end up with potential corruption. And these are all things that have happened. Yeah. Do I know if there'll be a successor to the TrueNAS Mini XL Plus? I don't know. I don't know what they're doing on the hardware side of the world. Like, they released those a few years ago, and I don't know if it's because they didn't sell good or what the real long-term goals are. They haven't really mentioned anything else. I don't know if they just, the hardware business and that smaller scale of it was just not ideal for them. But it's more one of those, I don't have an easy answer on that. I loved when they were involved in it, but I think especially right now is not a good time to start a hardware segment when memory prices and drive prices are absolutely unreasonable. Am I weird for wanting to build a slightly equivalent file system stack of pure Linux components instead of using ZFS on Linux and dealing with the problems caused by out of kernel tree code? I mean, building everything gets you a good learning experience when you dive deep into assembling all the things yourself versus using a distro that has everything assembled for you. So there's definitely some advantages to from a learning standpoint. There's a reason I don't spend a lot of time doing it, is because I don't have a lot of time. If I had more time, I would probably just nerd out and build something like that. It's a time balance. I know I've used Houston and I've used some of the 45 drive stuff, but it's not near as smooth. They're working towards it, but it is not near as smooth as the experience you get with TrueNAS. So I load TrueNAS on things. Matter of fact, I mean, it's not that I can't set up ZFS replication from the command line and then build out connections between different ZFS pools and set things up with SSH and so on and so forth. It's that ZFS send is so much easier on TrueNAS. I can point it at the other server. Yes, next. Yes. See you, data. Head over there. Backups are done. Moving on to the next task. So I'll fully admit, I think there is a part of me, especially the younger me, that would be mad at the older me because I'm doing things in a lazy way. But they removed some of the smart stuff in a GUI, but it's still there from the command line. They're making changes in how they do smart because smart's not that smart, especially with newer drives. So watch there, look up smart, look up the TrueNAS podcast. I think it's all of 25 minutes of your time to watch, to have, and less if you only jump to the section on smart. They talk about smart not being that smart. You've managed to put your NFS shares in FS tab, but whenever you write to them, I oftentimes KD Debian 13. Sounds like you have some resource issues where it's just not enough resources for what you're writing. It's a guess. You'd have to run some diagnostics on that. Just with TrueNAS built out real cluster environments. It was hinted early days of scale. So this is a real challenge. And this is why they built scale, was to scale it out. The problem is they didn't bet on the winning horse. That's an easy way to describe what happened. They made a choice. They chose Gluster. The problem with Gluster is it was discontinued by Red Hat was the one supporting Gluster, and Red Hat says, we're done with this. And when you started building your architecture, I don't know how you always can predict this, but you can't always predict that a company's going to drop support. And IX Systems did not have the resources, and still, to my knowledge, doesn't have the resources to pick up Gluster and build with it. So they dropped the name Scale because there's only so many resources you have to build a product. Can you also build and maintain all of the underlying of that product, especially when it comes to things like Gluster? So I get it that people really want that, but I don't know that they have a solution for that right now. Yeah, a lot of my stuff, because I've built stuff for so many years, I've been a Linux user since the early days. I mean, my first where I was actually paid, and I'm not saying when I first played with Linux, like when someone paid Tom to do some Linux things is all the way back in 1999. So I've been not just a Linux user since the inception of I could get it at the computer trade shows. That's actually where I picked it up. I picked up my first copy at a computer trade show. I remember getting Slackware, but I couldn't get it working. I do not remember why I couldn't get Slackware working. That is lost in my head somewhere because I went to the Red Hat disk. I think there was 5 floppy disks, and I was hooked. From there, I was like, yes. The Red Hat was my jam for a little while. It doesn't seem to do that when I copy things from my NAS to my laptop, TrueNAS. Yeah, I don't know. That's an odd problem you're having. Probably post in the forums and we can run through diagnostics together, or post in the TrueNAS forums as well. Here's a ZFS you I'm wondering about. What is the best way to go from a 2-drive mirror RAID or multi-drive configuration? Do I need to jump to 4+ drives? Yeah, once you start in mirrors, you stay in mirrors. So you have to add it 2 drives at a time. There's not any migration path for that. This is sometimes where people find themselves in a pickle because they've set it up with maybe an odd number of drives in a ZFS RAID Z1, and then they go to populate more of their, build another VDEV and expand, and they go, oh crap, this won't work because it doesn't fit the architecture for the server that I'm hosting it. There's not enough bays, or there's not the right number of bays. So you can get very tricky when you're setting it up. You migrated clients from eSCSI vCenter to Scale Computing over at your MSP. I think, and I had a conversation. This is a preliminary conversation with a fairly large company yesterday. I think they said they have around 70,000 employees. So give you an idea of the scale and scope they're operating at for their environment. But one of the things that people are really looking at isn't just going, do we jump to Nutanix or Scale? They're going, I got burned by a proprietary company. What is open source really? Everyone's been telling people open source is dangerous and open source this, but what's happening is people are going, I guess all that fear mongering by these large corporate enterprise companies that telling me open source was big, bad, and scary, while they rob me blind and bend me over and screw me over and shitify their products. They kind of don't want me to leave. So there seems to be a lot more conversations I'm having with CTOs of companies. Like most recently yesterday, that company I mentioned, it was with their head of tech going, we're looking at an open source solution. But I mean, they still have their concerns, and they were looking at XCP-NG, and they really wanted to know about support, and they had really good, solid questions on that. But those are, I think there's a lot more embracing CTOs are going to have of open source solutions going, these companies do not have my best interests, and they certainly will screw me the second they have a chance to. And so I don't see a move from VMware to Scale, Nutanix, or any of these companies as any more of just biding your time until, one of those companies can screw you again. Ooh, do I think Proxmox data center environment could achieve the level of feature parity with vCenter? I don't know. It is so rudimentary right now. I can't. It's hard for me to say because the concern I have, and I've been I talked to a developer. I talked to, my former business partner, Jason Slagle, about this just today. I said, I have a real concern about when I look at Proxmox, like, can they maintain this code base? Because I love, and also there's two sides to this coin here. I love that Proxmox has taken the time to put the engineering in. So their snapshots are file system aware. They do LVM snapshots in LVM. They do ZFS snapshots in ZFS, and they do different types of snapshots on things like iSCSI. That is several pieces of code base to maintain. As that expands, what does that look like in the long term? This is a code complexity versus the way it's handled in XCP-NG, where you just have a storage API. maybe they figured out a trick to doing it, but that is what scares me about Proxmox long term is can they keep up a really high rate of development? How long can they do it for? And how much are they going to be impacted by code changes on the underlying things that they didn't write because they wrote custom ways of handling it? So it's brilliant how much work they've put into it, but where's the maintainability on that? There was a lot of breakage from, was it 7 to 8 or 8 to 9? I think it was 7 to 8 had a whole lot of breakage in networking because Debian made changes to networking. And they had instructions on how to fix it. And if you're a Linux nerd, you can fix it. But being a Linux nerd is not a requirement for managing infrastructure at large companies. Therefore, people just want to be able to press the update button and not have it explode. Can Proxmox maintain that? That's really what's going to be a driving factor. The data center manager is pretty cool. Right now, as I pointed out in my video, it's extremely basic, but it's getting there, and they have a roadmap to make it much better. So awesome. You got a server running Unraid, hosting some Docker apps into Windows VMs, possibly into TrueNAS. You know, I don't have a compelling reason to tell you to leave Unraid. If you're doing it because you're bored, think about your limitations. If you're just bored, sure, move to TrueNAS. But if there's no limitation you've run into with Unraid that you're unhappy with, why would you move from Unraid? I don't think Unraid's a bad system. I don't know of any fundamental flaws with it. I know it's not as performant as TrueNAS, but that's where I asked the question, are you running into limitations? Are you going, wow, I am at this performance bottleneck? Now, there's ways you can make Unraid a little bit more performant. I'm not an expert at it, but there's things you could do to tune it and set it up. But you got to have like a reason to move. And if you don't have a reason to move, stay where you're at because you're happy. You were given a Dell T640 32 2.5 beige from a coworker. Just wanted to say your channel has been a huge help in my journey. Appreciate everything you do. Awesome. Thank you. Public sector, university here. Switch to open source, open, somewhat unlimited funds, but the manpower and oversight is still missing. Builds tech debt doesn't have to be paid somewhere else, typically in work hours, but doesn't mean you can't leverage your skills rather than a product. Skills are pretty expensive. Skilled people are very expensive. Code maintenance is one of the biggest reasons Proxmox is ready for scale that XCP-NG is. Yeah, I mean, I just don't worry about XCP-NG code updates or anything like that. They're really tightly integrated. The team is very public facing about how they do it. They're very transparent. The updates have gone extremely well. And I've been updating. It's kind of crazy when I think about some of the in-place upgrades I've been doing for like 6 years on the same servers without reloading them. You're just like, it just keeps updating and nothing breaks every time I do it. So 6 years of updates and all of them are shoulder shrug. Like, yeah, I hit update and it works. Cool. So yeah, it's I want to build out, like I said, some parallel videos, but also just more Proxmox servers and try to maintain them over time. Granted, I'm starting at Proxmox 9, so I'm starting at the mature end, but hey, anyone starting with Proxmox, if you're starting today, you're going to start with the same version I am. You're going to be in the 9 version and see how it goes. So I'm going to poke away at it and, you know, try to make some more in-depth determination on that as a topic. Fun stuff. What else I have on my list of things to talk about? I don't think I had much else. I have a lot of other things to talk about, but not enough time to talk about all of them. Let's see, we had ZFS in here. Got that. Yeah, just some update. Okay. You know, I can leave these thoughts here. I think enough of you know who he is. Let's pull this up real quick. So I just watched it. Where did it go? On August. I imagine a few of you follow follow Jake, right? Yeah, he just did a video why I left Linus Tech Tips. Good video if you want to watch it. Thought it was interesting. It is he seems like a nice guy. I don't know him personally. I've messaged him once or twice, but he seems really cool. But if you want to watch that video, he talks about a few of the subjects, and it is one of the challenges that I think even Linus Media Group is going to keep facing is lots of these channels build up, but it's really hard to maintain any talent on it because the talent figures out really quickly they can just go somewhere else and start their own thing once they become popular in front of the camera. But I've been following some of his stuff. I don't watch all of his videos because it's not exactly the content I like, but he just seems like a nice person. So I don't know if you guys have any thoughts. So that particular video I did watch because I was just kind of curious about his thoughts on why he left Linus Media Group, and they aligned with what I figured they were. A lot of it came down to money, and I don't blame him. As he commented, and maybe this is a little bit of bitterness, but so sorry. When you're working on this massive mansion for your boss and you can't even afford to buy a house, that's a problem. I really want to experiment Proxmox, but I don't have a homogeneous group of computers. Sorry about that. Yeah, you can do it with non-homogeneous computers. You just can't really do HA very well with non-homogeneous computers. So, yeah. With the number of cores available in the Homelab system, I've been wanting to tinker with Umbra OS, basically a different Synology DSM solution. I think I heard Wendell talked about that. Yeah. Yeah, he's upset he didn't get the merit increase for years while Linus bought 3 houses. Yeah, I mean, that is... but it's also a little bit disingenuous, what Linus said, because he's just like, that's how capitalism works. Hold up. You choose, Linus, what to pay your people. The way the companies work, the way my company and any other company works, I imagine it's not that much different just because he's under Canadian rules. But if my company makes X, I divide up X. You bring in X, you have all your expenses, so you deduct all the expenses. Big expenses are payroll. So you take the payroll and you divide it amongst people. And then what's left over after you make payroll is what you get to keep. That's minus, capital gains here in the United States. It's a rather simple formula. You can choose to pay people more. It's not, Linus blames capitalism. That's not capitalism. Linus can choose to pay Jake or anybody more money than he does. Now, he pays what the market will bear. That is a choice on his part. Generally, you pay labor based on market rates, but you don't have to. There's minimum rules, but there's no maximum rules for what you have to pay people. So throwing it out there that I watched Linus's video about how LTT spends their money, and I was like, yeah, that's kind of BS right there. And Jake properly called him out on it. So, yep. So I thought that video was interesting. Maybe I'll message him on that. Or maybe I'll see if a comment on his video. Like I said, he seems like a really nice guy. You've been testing a Chinese 6-port SATA controller based on the Marvel chipset. I was pleasantly surprised that the TrueNAS accepted with no problems. Oh yeah, I did the video where I had the little controller in the one system. Those little controllers are pretty clever. How's DocCan going? I've had no problems with DocCan. I've actually found it works fine. I like it. I think it's funny that people got mad at me for doing a video. At least 1 or 2 people, I think, left comments of, I'm a paid person. Apparently, I'm a secretly paid plant by the people at DocHand. Because they had never heard of it before my video. And I was like, you guys realize if you head over to this really secret website called Reddit and you go to self-hosted, I believe that's where I found it. I feel like it was in the self-hosted subreddit. This is talked about. I found this on Reddit. I didn't like discover it accidentally. I do spend a little bit of time on Reddit and some of the Homelab subreddits, and one of those Homelab subreddits, because I subscribed to several, I don't remember which one, was talking about Dockhand, and there was engagement from the developers, and I said, hey, this looks interesting. So then I tried it, and then after I tried it, I was like, other people might find this interesting, so I did a video on it, and here we are. Tom, you're a paid shill. Okay, by telling you about a free open source project. Okay, open source, not in OSI official capacity, but source available, blah, blah, blah. Disclaimer for the pedantic. So, been text, it's funny, I read it as testing anyways. Yeah, you are free to pay people what you want to business. Exactly. Are there any don'ts when setting up TrueNAS? Most common mistakes done by rookies. You know, probably setting things up with a RAID controller, or this is, I don't understand what someone was asking, but there is a comment on the video that I don't think I've replied to yet. And I try to reply to a lot of comments, but they're trying to format things with LVM and then put ZFS on it. Now, there are some weird guides out there. There are some outside of the normal rules of setting up ZFS where you can build drives out differently. I think people follow those guides and get themselves in a lot of trouble because then they lose data and they're trying to recover it, and trying to decipher what weird guide they had followed to set it up is usually a problem. For the most part, if you just do normal setups inside of TrueNAS, you don't find yourself in much trouble because TrueNAS puts some guardrails around what you're doing. A lot of the don'ts would be, hey, if you want to use special metadata VDEVs to speed things up, put them in pairs. So I thought about making a short video about that, of don't do these dumb things with ZFS. I thought about making not shorts, short videos that just give people some information of something in like 2 or 3 minutes, but I don't want to make them vertical. That I hate the vertical format myself, and I think others may agree with me. I don't know. Let me know either in comments or throw it out here, because I have to leave in 2 minutes to go to my next thing I got to go to. You are not free to pay people whatever you want when you employ them. No, I said there's minimums, but not maximums. The words I said was there are minimums that you have to pay people, but there's not maximums. So that's why I was saying that with Linus or LTT, he could choose to pay them more. It would leave less profit for him, but there's not a law that says you may not pay your employees more money. Yeah, the problem I have with vertical, so I like vertical for, I'm showing you something like some technical thing. I don't think that's terrible for vertical. Where I dislike it is if I wanted to show you a couple settings inside of TrueNAS. Squeezing TrueNAS, the interface, to a mobile format is ugly and harder to teach someone how or where to click. This extends out to more than just TrueNAS. It's just a topic at hand. So I don't love that aspect of it. How many meter hard drives does it take to saturate a 10 gig connection? That is going to depend on, you just go ahead and throw, it'd probably be best to throw it in ChatGPT, because it'll start asking you questions that I would ask. Like, hey, what speed are the drives? Are they SSDs? Are they NVMEs? Are they HDDs? All you have to do is calculate the write or read performance you get for each pair times how much can a drive realistically send, and then you get that number. I mean, it's going to vary because I don't know what drive you're starting with. I'm assuming most drives are going to be 7,200 RPM, but if you're doing high speed SAS backed ones, well, maybe they're at 10,000 RPM, and those ones may have even faster ramp ups to get to the 10 gig. So yeah, just rotate your phone. That's all I need to do. That'll solve it. But Hit me up on the forums at forums.launchsystems.com. On the socials, you can find me at launchsystems.com. I'm out of here. I got to go meet a friend, have some good conversation about some silly stuff, no doubt, talking tech and all that. Friend, I try to do more and more of these where people reach out, or Bob is someone I've known for a while. He's who I'm going to go have essentially BSing and some dinner with. So that's where I got to head to next. Thanks all of you for joining. It was wonderful. Thanks to the people who reached out last week. And I'm still engaging with some of you. So that was definitely fun. Like I said, people have found me quite responsive. So I'm not a hard person to get a hold of. I do like talking tech with people or ideas. I've been engaging a little bit more on Reddit as well. So all that fun stuff. So see you around, see you online. Everybody take care. Now I got to find the off button.